And July the 20th marks the anniversary of the Apollo 11 moon landing, which happened 53 years ago in 1969.
The Apollo missions changed history, but behind every successful moon landing were terrifying moments that nearly ended the lunar program. Astronauts faced deadly fires, failing spacecraft, split-second decisions, and life-threatening emergencies that remained largely unknown to the public for years. While Apollo became a symbol of human achievement, many of its most dangerous moments received far less attention than its greatest triumphs. So, what really happened during the Apollo missions? And are these the horrifying details that some believe NASA tried to keep from public view? The deadly cost of reaching the moon. The Apollo program was one of the most ambitious engineering projects ever attempted. Reaching the moon required astronauts to travel hundreds of thousands of kilometers through an environment where even the smallest mistake could prove fatal. Every launch, orbit, landing, and return to Earth depended on thousands of components working almost perfectly. A single failure could mean the loss of an entire crew. Although the public celebrated each successful mission, the astronauts and engineers understood that spaceflight was anything but routine. Equipment failures, navigation problems, electrical malfunctions, and environmental hazards constantly threatened every stage of the journey. During the intense years of the Cold War, pressure to reach the moon before the Soviet Union pushed NASA to move quickly, often testing technology that had never before been used in human spaceflight. The risks were enormous, yet many remained largely unknown outside the agency. Mission controllers watched hundreds of instruments during every flight, searching for warning signs that could signal disaster. Astronauts trained relentlessly for emergencies, knowing there would be no rescue mission if something went wrong in deep space. Every decision carried extraordinary consequences, and success often depended on remaining calm during situations that changed within seconds. Every mission also depended on thousands of engineers, technicians, and flight controllers working together behind the scenes. Their preparation often determined whether a dangerous situation ended in tragedy or survival. One tragedy, however, exposed just how dangerous the Apollo program had become before a single crew ever reached the moon. On January 27, 1967, astronauts Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee were conducting what should have been a routine ground test for Apollo 1. Instead, a fire suddenly erupted inside the spacecraft while it sat on the launch pad. Within moments, the cabin filled with flames and toxic gases, trapping all 3 astronauts inside. None survived. Investigators later found that the spacecraft's pure oxygen atmosphere allowed the fire to spread with terrifying speed. The hatch design also made escape nearly impossible, preventing rescuers from reaching the crew before it was too late. What began as an ordinary systems test became one of the darkest moments in NASA's history. The tragedy forced NASA to confront serious weaknesses in the Apollo spacecraft. Engineers redesigned the hatch so it could be opened much more quickly during emergencies. Materials inside the capsule were replaced with less flammable alternatives, and the cabin atmosphere used during ground tests was changed to reduce the risk of another fire. Safety procedures throughout the Apollo program were also strengthened. The loss of Grissom, White, and Chaffee changed NASA forever. Their deaths became a constant reminder that exploring space demanded far more than technological innovation. It required learning from failure. The lessons gained from Apollo 1 helped shape every mission that followed and likely saved the lives of future astronauts. Even after those improvements, however, reaching the moon remained an extraordinarily dangerous challenge. The greatest test was still ahead, when NASA attempted humanity's first lunar landing. Apollo 11's closest call. By the summer of 1969, NASA had overcome years of setbacks, redesigns, and relentless testing. Everything now depended on Apollo 11, the mission that would attempt the first human landing on the moon. Around the world, millions watched as Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins carried humanity's greatest ambition beyond Earth. Yet, while the mission appeared calm on television, the most dangerous moments were still unfolding inside the lunar module. On July 20th, 1969, Armstrong and Aldrin separated from the command module and began their descent toward the lunar surface. As the spacecraft dropped lower, warning alarms suddenly began flashing across the onboard computer. The system was overloaded, struggling to process more information than expected. For a few tense moments, neither the astronauts nor mission control knew whether the landing should continue or be aborted. Back on Earth, engineers quickly analyzed the alarms and determined that although the computer was overloaded, it could still perform the essential guidance needed for landing. The decision was made to continue. Even so, every passing second increased the pressure as the lunar module descended closer to the surface. The situation became even more dangerous when Armstrong realized the spacecraft was heading toward a field covered with large rocks and craters. Landing there could destroy the lunar module before the astronauts ever stepped onto the moon. With little time remaining, Armstrong took manual control, steering the spacecraft away from the hazardous terrain while carefully searching for a safer landing site. As the module drifted across the surface, another problem emerged. Fuel was rapidly running out. Every second spent searching for a landing spot brought the spacecraft closer to exhausting its remaining propellant. Dust thrown up by the descent engine also reduced visibility, making it increasingly difficult to judge altitude and identify safe terrain. The margin for error had almost disappeared. Inside the cockpit, Buzz Aldrin continued reading navigation data while Armstrong concentrated entirely on flying the spacecraft. Their teamwork proved critical during those final moments. At last, Armstrong guided the lunar module safely onto the surface, completing one of the most remarkable landings in history. Only afterward did many people learn how close the mission had come to ending in disaster. The danger did not end with the landing. The astronauts still had to complete their scientific objectives, launch from the lunar surface, reconnect with the command module, and survive the long journey home. Although Armstrong's first step onto the moon became one of history's defining moments, the astronauts still faced limited oxygen, strict time constraints, and the constant possibility that equipment could fail before they returned home. Every scientific task had to be completed efficiently, because their survival depended on staying on schedule. After spending more than 21 hours on the lunar surface, Armstrong and Aldrin successfully lifted off and reunited with Michael Collins in the command module. Even then, the mission was not over. Re-entering Earth's atmosphere and splashing down in the Pacific Ocean remained among the most dangerous phases of the journey. According to the source material, the capsule unexpectedly took on water after landing because of depressurization, creating another potentially life-threatening situation before recovery crews reached the astronauts. To the public, Apollo 11 appeared almost flawless. But behind the famous photographs and celebrations were computer alarms, dwindling fuel, hazardous terrain, and unexpected problems that nearly changed history. The first moon landing succeeded not because it was free of danger, but because the astronauts and engineers responded calmly when everything seemed ready to go wrong. Apollo 11 proved that even a successful mission could come within moments of catastrophe. Yet the challenges facing NASA were far from over. The missions that followed would encounter even more unexpected emergencies, some beginning just seconds after launch, and another becoming one of the greatest survival stories in the history of space exploration. When Apollo nearly failed, Apollo 11 proved that landing on the moon was possible, but it also revealed how quickly success could turn into disaster. The missions that followed faced new dangers, reminding NASA that every flight carried unpredictable risks. Two missions in particular, Apollo 12 and and Apollo 13 showed just how fragile survival in space could be. Apollo 12 launched on November 14, 1969, with the goal of building on Apollo 11's success. Almost immediately, however, the mission encountered a crisis. Just seconds after liftoff, lightning struck the Saturn V rocket, flooding the spacecraft with warning lights and causing multiple electrical systems to malfunction at once. Instruments suddenly went offline, telemetry became unreliable, and the crew faced an emergency they had never experienced during training. Commander Charles "Pete" Conrad and his crew had only moments to assess the situation. While Mission Control worked to understand what had happened, lunar module pilot Alan Bean located the correct switch to restore the spacecraft's electrical systems. His quick response allowed the mission to continue, preventing what could have become an early abort. The incident demonstrated how a single lightning strike could threaten an entire lunar mission before it had even left Earth's atmosphere. The challenges continued long after launch. According to the source material, the mission encountered additional technical problems involving stage separation, the lunar landing, and onboard equipment. One malfunction complicated the descent to the moon, forcing the crew to complete another difficult landing under increasing pressure. Later, an accidental strike damaged the television camera intended to broadcast activities from the lunar surface, ending the live transmission much earlier than planned. Some photographic equipment and film were also reportedly damaged or lost, reducing part of the mission's scientific record. Mission controllers also faced concerns about systems that would later be needed during re-entry. Rather than adding unnecessary stress to the crew, NASA managed some of these issues on the ground while continuing to monitor the spacecraft throughout the mission. Apollo 12 ultimately returned safely, but the mission highlighted how even successful flights depended on countless decisions made under intense pressure. Each successful solution strengthened NASA's confidence while revealing new weaknesses that future missions would need to overcome. If Apollo 12 tested NASA's ability to respond to unexpected failures, Apollo 13 became the ultimate test of survival. Launched in April 1970, Apollo 13 began as another planned moon landing with astronauts Jim Lovell, Jack Swigert, and Fred Hayes. For the first 2 days, everything appeared normal. Then, an oxygen tank exploded inside the service module, severely damaging the spacecraft and causing a rapid loss of oxygen, electrical power, and other critical systems. In an instant, the mission changed from lunar exploration to a desperate fight to bring 3 astronauts home alive. Mission Control immediately began searching for solutions while the crew worked to stabilize the damaged spacecraft. One of the most important decisions was to shut down the command module and use the lunar module, Aquarius, as a temporary lifeboat. Designed to support only 2 astronauts for a short stay on the moon, it now had to sustain 3 men during the long journey back to Earth. Conditions inside Aquarius quickly became extremely difficult. Temperatures dropped close to freezing, food and water had to be carefully rationed, and the cramped cabin made rest almost impossible. According to the source material, Fred Hayes also developed a urinary tract infection during the mission, adding to the crew's physical hardship. Despite exhaustion and uncertainty, the astronauts continued following procedures while engineers on Earth calculated a safe route home. As Apollo 13 looped around the moon and headed back toward Earth, every system had to perform just well enough to keep the crew alive. Navigation, electrical power, and life support equipment all operated under severe limitations. The margin for error remained incredibly small until the final moments of the mission. When the spacecraft finally re-entered Earth's atmosphere, the parachutes deployed successfully, allowing the crew to splash down safely in the Pacific Ocean. What had begun as another lunar mission ended as one of NASA's greatest demonstrations of teamwork, engineering, and calm decision-making under extraordinary pressure. Apollo 13 showed the world that surviving space could sometimes be as remarkable as exploring it. The dangers of Apollo were not limited to explosions and equipment failures. Long before any emergency occurred, astronauts faced another battle, one that received far less public attention but affected every mission from launch to landing. The hidden human cost. The greatest dangers of the Apollo missions were not always explosions, equipment failures, or emergency landings. Many of the hardest challenges were invisible: constant psychological pressure, physical exhaustion, and the knowledge that help was hundreds of thousands of kilometers away. Every astronaut understood that even a minor malfunction could become a life-threatening emergency, and that awareness followed them throughout every mission. Life inside an Apollo spacecraft was far from comfortable. The cabins were cramped, noisy, and offered little room to move. Astronauts spent long hours surrounded by equipment, while following demanding schedules that left little opportunity for rest. Sleep was frequently interrupted by mission activities, and the stress of monitoring spacecraft systems made true relaxation almost impossible. The physical strain became even more severe during emergencies. During Apollo 13, for example, the crew endured near-freezing temperatures after moving into the lunar module, carefully rationing food, water, and electrical power while waiting to return home. According to the source material, Fred Hayes developed a urinary tract infection during the mission, adding another challenge to an already desperate situation. Even without a major emergency, prolonged confinement and demanding workloads tested every astronaut's endurance. The psychological burden could be just as difficult. Surrounded by the silence of space, astronauts carried the constant responsibility of making critical decisions under extreme pressure. Communication with Earth remained essential, yet every crew understood that no rescue mission could arrive if something went wrong. The isolation, combined with the knowledge that a single mistake could prove fatal, required extraordinary mental discipline. Maintaining focus under those conditions demanded exceptional discipline, trust, and confidence in both the crew and mission control. According to the source material, astronauts also experienced unusual sensory effects and relied on personal routines to manage stress. Small moments of humor, private keepsakes, and familiar rituals helped maintain morale during missions that demanded intense concentration. These personal touches reminded everyone that beneath the pressure and public admiration, the astronauts were ordinary people facing extraordinary circumstances. Behind the scenes, NASA also carried a different responsibility: managing risk while maintaining public confidence in the Apollo program. During the Cold War, every mission represented not only a scientific achievement, but also a symbol of national prestige. According to the source material, the agency sometimes limited public discussion of potential dangers, and, in certain situations, chose not to share every concern with the astronauts themselves in order to avoid unnecessary panic. At the same time, engineers and flight controllers worked continuously to improve spacecraft safety. Every accident, equipment failure, and near miss became an opportunity to strengthen procedures, redesign critical systems, and prepare crews more effectively for future missions. Lessons learned from Apollo 1, Apollo 11, Apollo 12, and Apollo 13 gradually transformed the program into one that balanced bold exploration with increasingly disciplined risk management. While astronauts became the public face of Apollo, thousands of engineers, technicians, and flight controllers shared responsibility for every mission's success. Their ability to solve problems under immense pressure often determined whether a mission ended in triumph or tragedy. Together, they demonstrated that exploring space required far more than courage alone. It demanded constant preparation, teamwork, and the willingness to learn from every mistake. Those hard-earned lessons would ultimately shape not only the future of the Apollo program, but every crewed space mission that followed. The legacy of Apollo's darkest moments. The Apollo missions are remembered for achieving what once seemed impossible: landing humans on the moon and returning them safely to Earth. Yet behind those historic accomplishments were countless dangers that forced NASA to rethink how space exploration should be carried out. Every tragedy, close call, and unexpected emergency became a lesson that shaped the future of human spaceflight. The loss of the Apollo 1 crew led to major changes in spacecraft design and safety procedures. The near disaster during Apollo 11 demonstrated the importance of balancing advanced technology with human judgment during critical moments. Apollo 12 revealed how quickly unexpected failures could threaten a mission, while Apollo 13 proved that teamwork, preparation, and problem-solving could overcome even the most dangerous situations. Together, these missions transformed the way NASA approached risk, making future flights safer for every crew that followed. The Apollo program also changed how astronauts were prepared for space. Beyond technical training, greater attention was eventually given to physical endurance, psychological resilience, emergency planning, and communication between astronauts and mission controllers. Engineers continued improving life support systems, spacecraft reliability, and emergency procedures, recognizing that successful exploration depended as much on preparation as on innovation. Many of those safety principles remain part of astronaut training today, continuing to influence how modern crews prepare for future missions. According to the source material, Apollo's legacy extends far beyond the moon. The knowledge gained from its successes and failures continues to influence modern lunar exploration and future missions beyond Earth. Every spacecraft built today benefits from lessons learned during those early journeys, where every launch carried extraordinary risks, and every safe return represented years of experience earned under the most demanding conditions imaginable. The Apollo astronauts are remembered not only because they reached the moon, but because they accepted challenges few people would ever face. Their achievements were made possible by thousands of engineers, technicians, flight controllers, and support teams working together behind the scenes. Their combined efforts transformed impossible ambitions into historic accomplishments while continually improving the safety of human spaceflight. Today, as NASA prepares for new missions to the Moon and eventually Mars, the Apollo program remains both an inspiration and a reminder. Its greatest legacy is not simply that humans reached another world. It is that every success was built on lessons learned from failure, perseverance, and the determination to keep exploring despite extraordinary risks. The Apollo missions changed history, but they also revealed how dangerous space exploration truly was. Behind every successful landing were split-second decisions, extraordinary teamwork, and lessons learned through tragedy and near disaster. Which Apollo mission do you think came closest to catastrophe? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this look behind the scenes of the Apollo program, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more incredible stories from the history of space exploration.